Hello again team, it's Jess or JashiiCorrin and welcome back for another video. Something a little bit different today, but in this video I'm going to be taking you through the Excel markbooks that I have for teaching my middle school and senior school science classes. A few of you expressed interest in seeing this back when I released my video on bullet journal spreads for teachers, which is linked in the cards above. For those of you who didn't already know, I am a secondary school teacher. I teach general science to our younger students and then chemistry and physics, mainly chemistry, to our senior school students. I'm also my school's CAS coordinator, but at this stage I don't have an Excel markbook for that because it isn't really necessary. As I mentioned though, in today's video I'm going to be taking you through two Excel markbooks. One for the Year 8 General Science class, so with students who are roughly 12 to 13 years old, depending on what time of the year it is. And one for roughly 15 to 16 year olds, which is the Year 11 Phys Chem course. The data that I have in these ones is a mix between completely made up with a random number generator and actual student data. But everything that I have has been anonymized, so you won't actually see any student names in here. Starting with our first one though, the Year 8 Markbook, the first tab that I have on here is a year planner. So this is just essentially a place where I can schedule out all of the lessons that I have and the order I want them in. I can summarize whether I have the notes and slides and activities for that done, whether assessments are ready, that kind of stuff. As you can see, it is pretty empty. When I first started off teaching, I found this super helpful, but then I got into bullet journaling and a lot of that kind of stuff moved into there. Having a look at each section more specifically though, I have a space for the week number, a space for the date of the lesson, which topic those lessons are going to fall under, the content or what can be considered like a lesson title, and then spaces to write down whether I've got the notes, slides, and activities planned. In the activities column in particular, I might actually write out what the activity is, if there's a quiz or any assignments, and if there's any work I can assign from Education Perfect. As I mentioned, this one got used to varying extents. It's mainly something that I use at the start of the year rather than during the year. Another tab that I find particularly helpful is the Lesson Sequences tab. This one in particular is quite helpful when I have multiple streams of the same subject. So in previous years I've had up to 3 streams of the Year 8 Science course. So making sure I know where each of those classes is up to is pretty important. On this page here I again have the week number, the date, and then I have a column for each of the Year 8 classes. As for the past 4 years, I've also been the teacher in charge of Year 8 Science. It's good to know where all the other classes are up to as well. This one I've also found to be quite helpful when I'm planning school trips, so that I can try and get the classes to be pulled out of science rather than affecting other classes. After this we have the Overall tab. And on this one, it's essentially just a summary of all of their graded results for the year. In this one I have space for the student's name and their class. The class section I include just in case I have multiple streams. The place where it says 2018 program is to write down if anybody's in learning support or if they're in learning extension. After this I have my PAT data section. This is one of the spaces that I've used a random number generator. So if the data looks a little bit all over the place, that's why. In this section and any other sections that have numbers, I also have a space down the bottom to say what the highest possible grade is, what the lowest possible grade is, what the highest was that was achieved, lowest achieved, overall average, and then a section that essentially just counts all of the students in each quartile. So who achieved 75% or up, who achieved 50% to 75%, that kind of stuff. In this next section here, which is in the reds, orange, yellows, and greens, this is a space for the students' MYP data. So these are the assessments that we do throughout the year. Our assessments fall into 4 categories, A, B, C, D. So at the top I just have written out what type of assessment it is, and then all of the numbers are just their grades. All the values in this section get pulled from these tabs at the bottom for each of the topics. So the stuff in columns A and D under topic 1 get pulled from this red tab here which says forensics. After this I just have a column for the averages and then a section to award the overall grades. At the end of the year we have to make a holistic judgment for each of our students from the assessments that they've had. Again, the data here might look a little bit weird because those ones were done using a random number generator as well. So typically if a student got a 5 and a 5 in their 2 criteria A tests, They're not going to get an 8 for criteria A overall. Moving on to the tabs for each of our topics though, these are relatively the same, but a little bit different. It really just depends on what I think is important to record at the time. So during our first topic, one of the things I thought was important to record was the student's completion rate of work in their OneNote, which is what we have in this first section here. At the end of each lesson, I'd check the students' work in their OneNote to see how much they'd completed. So done meant that they'd completed everything they needed to, mostly meant that there might have been a couple things missing, some meant that there was a fair bit missing, and then not started is pretty self-explanatory. Again, down the bottom I just have a section that counts up the number of students who have completed how much, with the top bar here being done or completed, then mostly, some, and not started. The main thing that I use each of these topic tabs for though is recording assessment data. So under this section here, Criterion A assessment, this was all of the data that I have from one of their topic tests. So I have a section for each question and the score that they got in those, an average for each of the strands, because there's 2 questions for each strand. This one is then converted into an average of those grades, with the average being given out of 8. So you can see the student who got 4, 4, and 4 gets an average grade of 8, because 4 is the top in each of those brackets, but 8 is what we're grading out of overall. That probably seems confusing, and honestly it is, but it's just the system I use. And then in this section here, we have the actual grade that was awarded. This is done using a specific scale that I'm not going to get into, because honestly, it's just confusing. But this is the column that the data actually gets pulled from. This is the data that ends up on that overall page. For some assessments, I will want to include a few more details though. So for instance, in our Criterion D assessment over here, that's a written report that my students do. So in this one, I also wanted to include what topic they did and what factor they were looking at. In this one, I also write down their Turnitin score, with the lower number being better. I record their results for each of the different strands, the average of those results, and then what their actual grade was. In this assessment, I've also written myself some notes, which become really helpful when it comes to doing report writing, because then I have specific things to talk about in terms of next steps for each student. Just having a look quickly at the other ones for each topic, so we have science fair, similar things again, so recording of what their topic is, recording whether they've written their planning sheet, general grades, next steps, that kind of thing. Earth Science, that one was a Criteria A test, so again we have questions 1 through 6, we have their grade in each strand, average and overall grade. Random colour change on this one, not too sure why. In electromagnetism, we had another B and C assessment, so that is the planning of an investigation and then the collecting of the data and analysing that data. So again, a place to write down each of the grades in each strand, an average and then their overall grade, and also a space to write down some notes. And for the last one, similar again, but we're back to a Criteria D assessment, which is a report, so I also wrote down their report topic. The last tab that I have in this Excel document is just a space to write down their data from the previous year. This is mainly again used at the start of the year when I don't really know the students, and I just want a little bit of information about how well they went in the year prior. So it does look a little bit messy and used to varying extents. Honestly, data is messy sometimes. And because this one is half based on random number generator numbers and actual student data numbers, it is a little higgledy-piggledy. Having a look at my senior one though, this one starts off much the same, so with a year planner, which again I mainly use at the start of the year. That's probably because as the year goes on I get a little bit lazy about checking in with it, but I do still find it helpful. After this we have the overall page, which, as the name suggests, is an overall summary of all of the students' grades. The difference here is the way that we grade our seniors to the way we grade our juniors. So for our juniors, we have them doing the middle years program, which is graded on a scale of 1 through 8, whereas our year 11s is graded as part of NCEA, so they're graded on the scale of excellence, merit, achieved, and not achieved, thus the letters. For our end of topic tests and school exams, however, these are also given a point score, where each of the questions is out of 8, and then depending on your final total, you'll get one of those letter grades. So it might be something like a score of 19 or above is an excellence, a score of 13 and above is a merit, that kind of thing. Depends on the test. So in this one I have student information, so name and class. You can see that there are 2 classes recorded in this one because I last year had 2 Year 11 classes. Again, some of the data here represents real student data and some of it is just random number generator. The first section I have is for internal grades, which is just your regular AME scoring, so achieved merit, excellence, that stuff. And then we have our end of topic test grades, which lists both the score and the letter grade, and then the same again for school examination grades. This last part is the weighted total, which just assigns 4 points to an excellence, 3 points to a merit, and 2 points to an achieved, and then counts up what their point score is based on that. That one's just looking at their exam totals though. So you can see here the kid who got 3 excellence grades in their school exams gets a score of 12, because 4 times 3 is 12. In the next section we have the E and M count, so how many excellence credits did they get versus how many excellence and merit credits did they get. This one was mainly for predicting overall outcomes for the year. So it has a look at their internal assessments and their school examination grades, the score that they got in those, and then the number of credits assigned to each of those assessments. Most of the standards that we did in Year 11 last year were 4 credits, but we did have one that was only 3 credits, which makes for fun formulae. The next 5 tabs we have down the bottom are just for each of the topics. So in this one, it's really just recording of end of topic scores, school examination scores, and then also work completed. In these ones, I also like to record what each score was for each question. So not just the overall test score, but what they got specifically in each of the questions, so I can see which areas our classes need the most work on. In addition to the assessment information, I also have a space to record work completion. The 2 main things that I look at in terms of this are Education Perfect work and SciPad work, which is their workbook. And those ones are recorded over here on the Education Perfect tab and the Workbook tab, which honestly looks like a little bit of a mess, and it kinda is. But along the top here we have all of the different units that I've assigned them on Education Perfect, and then in the middle here where all of the pink and blue are, that's where their actual numbers are in terms of their completion. As I said, data can be kinda messy sometimes. For the workbook though, I go back to that scale of done, mostly, started, or not started. The Education Perfect one is kind of nice because the Education Perfect platform just gives you that data. The workbook one though, I do have to go and check it off and input it myself. So not really something I'm thinking about doing this coming year, but previously I have found it to be helpful. Flicking through the rest of those topics though, the only difference I have for the internal topics is that there's less to record, because the style of internal assessment we use doesn't have questions that are graded on a point scale. So this one's just really the recording of the overall formative assessment grade and the overall summative assessment grade. In some of the tabs I'll also have sections dedicated to assignments, so the score in the assignment and then the overall percentage of that assignment. That's not percentage towards a grade, that's just what they got out of 100%. We've got the one for mechanics and the one for waves. And then just like I had for my year 8s, I also have a section for their data from the previous year. So quite a lot of stuff in these ones. Probably looks like a little bit of a mess, because as I said, it's partially used, partially random number generator. I'm sure that a lot of the things that I have in here could be translated into actual teacher planner spreads, but honestly, with the amount of data that I like to collect and manipulate, it is way easier for me to do it on Microsoft Excel. Hopefully you found today's video interesting. If you guys have any questions about how I set this up, or how I use it, or any other suggestions of things I could record, because as I said, I love data, please do leave it in the comments section below. Thank you for watching, team. If you liked today's video, please do make sure to give it a big thumbs up, and I'll be back tomorrow with my weekly vlog. Until next time, bye!